Good morning, everyone. Today we are going to talk about some applications we can use in order to get benefit of that electrolysis. First of all, let's revise what's the meaning of electrolysis. Electrolysis, it's the breaking down of ionic compound when they are molten or in the aqueous state using electricity. Okay, so what are the uses and what are the applications of that process? The first use is electroplating. I can use electrolysis in order to coat one metal with another metal using electricity. Okay, so I'm gonna coat a metal with other metal. Okay, why we use this process? What's the benefit of it? In order to make it look better. Okay, like jewelry. Some jewelry are plated with other metals like gold and silver, and also we can get benefit of preventing corrosion, especially when we are dealing with some food containers and cooking pots. We need to cover them with something that resistant to corrosion and to be reacted with other solutions and chemicals. Okay, what's the cell? We are familiar with electrolysis cell and main parts. We need anode, we need cathode, we need electricity source like battery, we need also an electrolyte, and we put all of these parts inside a container. Okay, electroplating cell, the anode and the cathode is somehow different from the previous one, because we will put on the anode the plating metal. Okay, the plating metal, the metal that I'm going to use in order to plate the object or the other metal, I will put it on the anode part. What's the meaning of that? It will be connected to the positive side of the battery. Okay, the cathode will be the metal that will being plated. Okay, or the object I'm going to plate. Okay, let's assume I put here a spoon, like it's an object, it's made of metal, and I'm going to plate it like with silver. Okay, so assume this is silver, and here we have metal from iron, for example. Okay, before we start electroplating, we have some steps we should do. First of all, I have to clean that metal. Okay, in order to accept all of the covering metal, it should be cleaned and totally cleaned. In order to clean a metal, I have two ways. Either we can use diluted hydrochloric acid as an acid to remove any impurities or tracing on that object, or we can use a sandpaper. Okay, a sandpaper, it's like coarse paper that we can use it in order to remove anything on my metal. Okay, again, the anode is my plating metal. Okay, and the cathode, it's the object we are going to plate. And the electrolyte, we must have an electrolyte. That electrolyte, it must contain an ions from my plating metal. So if my plating metal is silver, we are going to use an electrolyte of silver, like silver nitrate, silver sulfate, anything like this. Okay, let's start with the process, and I'm going to plate my object with silver. The process for silver plating, first of all, I will immerse or dip my anode and cathode and connect them to the wires inside the electrolyte and the container, and I will switch on my circuit. Electroplating will start. What will happen? Oxidation will happen. Anox. Remember those statements. Anox, red cat. Anox, it means on the anode I will have oxidation for my metal. My metal is silver, so it's going to be oxidized. How can I oxidize the metal Ag? I will start with Ag. After oxidation, it's going to lose electrons, so it will be converted into the ionic form. And in order to have oxidation, I should show my electrons or the lost electrons. Okay, So oxidation will start on the anode. Those electrons and those ions, they will move in the circuit. Electrons will move through the electrolyte toward the cathode, and ions will move through the electrolyte through the cathode, and electrons, the lost electrons or released electrons, will move through the cathode, but through what? Through the wires. Electrons cannot move through electrolyte or solution. Only they can move through wires. So electrons will move through the wires, and ions will move through the electrolyte. Okay, what will happen on the cathode? Red cat. On the cathode, I will have reduction. So reduction starts at the cathode. What will happen with ions that reached the cathode? Ions will accept the electrons that comes from through the wires. So I will have reduction for silver ions, and I will form what? Ag atoms. This is half ionic equation for reduction. Okay, at the end of electroplating, what we will have? I will have this spoon will be totally covered with a layer of silver. Okay, in order to make sure that all of the parts and all of the sides of the spoon is covered, I have to rotate my spoon several times through the electroplating. Okay, so while I'm doing my electroplating, you have to rotate your object several times, and at the end I will see that anode gets smaller as the silver is being oxidized and it's converting into iron, and this spoon it will get larger and thicker as it's covered with silver layer. Okay, how can I remove the coating? If one person asks you, how can I remove a coating from a spoon, and in order to cover it with something else, only you have to exchange the positions of the anode and the cathode. So I will put here the spoon on the anode, and I will put the metal on the cathode and turn on my circuit. So the spoon will start oxidation, and the silver or the coating silver will start oxidation and dissolving inside my electrolyte. And here it's important to have an electrolyte from the same metal we are dealing with in order to have ability to dissolve inside my solution or electrolyte. So in order to remove that coating from the spoon, I can switch the places between the spoon and the metal. This spoon I will put it on the anode, and this metal I will put it on the cathode, and the opposite will happen. Not opposite for oxidation and reduction, but the coating will be oxidized, and it will be after oxidation it will the atoms or the ions of the silver will be reduced on that part after switching on the places. Okay, other application, metal refining. We can use electricity and electrolysis in order to refine. What's the meaning of refine? Making the metal pure. So in order to purification and refining a metal, we can use electrolysis. In my refining cell, I will put my impure metal on the anode and the pure metal on the cathode. What will happen? The pure metals atoms on this part will be oxidized and go through the electrolyte to be deposited and settle on this cathode. Okay, so in the anode we must all the time put the impure metal. On the cathode I will put my pure metal. Electrolyte contains ions from the metal we are going to refine, and we are dealing with same metal. So if I'm going to refine copper, I will use impure copper and pure copper, not different metals. Refining copper, this is an example. We can use refining process for any metal. Refining copper, I will put this I will put on this refining cell. or electrolysis cell. I will put here the impure copper, the pure copper. What will happen when we switch on this circuit? The impure copper will start oxidation. How? Copper will be oxidized to copper ions, and the ions and electrons will move through the circuit. Electrons will move through the wires, and ions will move through the electrolyte. In order to move through the electrolyte, I must have an electrolyte that contains ions from my metal, like copper sulfate. Okay, assume we are dealing with copper 2 with oxidation number 2. Okay, the released ions will be all of them will go through the circuit in order to reach my cathode. At the cathode, we will see reduction for those ions. Ions will accept the electrons from wires to be deposited on this pure metal to form only ions or atoms from copper. Okay, observation: after the ending of that purification, I will see this anode gets smaller and this cathode gets larger and thicker, and the impurities here will settle down. Impurities here from this anode will settle down at the bottom of the electrolyte and the cell. That's it for today. I hope you understand all of the points, and see you in next video.